Hello and welcome to another Sprues Brews review video. It's been a bit of a bumper weekend for 40k pre-orders with 3 different books all up available to order at the minute. But in this video we are having a look at the Dark Eldar themselves, better known as the Drukhari. So far in 9th edition we've had the Necrons, but outside of that there's not really been much love for the Xenos races. That all changes in Codex Drukhari. We've seen a few teasers of this on Warhammer Community and a few mentions from some other designers that this is one of their favourite books so far from a Crusade point of view. So really excited to kind of dive into that side of it, because as you've probably seen in our other videos, Crusade's one of our favourite things about the game, and yeah, inside this book there's some really cool stuff for the Crusade system, as well as lots of updates for match play, all the updated profiles and the usual stuff you would see. So yeah, massive thanks to Games Workshop for sending this out to us a little bit early so we could have a look at it. In addition to this video, we have also got a full in-depth review over on the website www.spruesandbrews.com detailing all the cool stuff within the book. So yeah, I thought we'd have a quick look through it and check out what is inside. So by now, I'm sure you're very used to the format of these books. Lots of gorgeous artwork showing off the army, as well as a lot of kind of narrative information and lore fleshing out who the Drukhari are, from their origins as part of the Eldar race, the fall of the Eldar and the nasty little side effect of their souls being consumed by Slaanesh, and yeah, how they use a slightly different tact than the Craftworlders, essentially causing torment to keep their souls in shape. And yeah, really nice book. As we've seen with all the other codexes, it goes through all the various cults, all the various cabals, breaking down all the background with loads of information. So I've said it before in these videos, but if you're new to an army and want to kind of absorb all that knowledge and information about your force to better kind of tailor your army to the lore, these books are really nice for that. Even if you're an old player as well, there's enough new stuff. We've got some stories in there. We've got this war zone here, is something that we've seen in a few books as well, where they expand on a region of space where there might be conflict happening. So yeah, as far as kind of lore developments, there's not anything massively new in here. You know, like the Silent King returning or Guilliman returning, there's not much in the way of kind of brand new advancement in lore. Hopefully that's something that we see in the kind of like narrative campaign supplements that are coming out. So yeah, but it's nice to capture together all that information about the race. So then going on, as we ever have, is a nice breakdown of the miniature range with some gorgeously painted models. Again, this is a fairly standard thing that we see in codexes these days, but it is nice to give you those inspiring artworks so you can paint your own forces. And yeah, I really like the Dark Eldar range. Since they had their kind of entire range redo a couple of years ago, the models look incredible now. But we get to the real meat of the book, and that is the rules. Again, very similar format that we've seen in the other books, breaking it down into colour-coded segments, detailing all the stuff that we need. And as with other books, we also get an example combat patrol, which is coincidentally the contents of the combat patrol that you can buy separately. I have to say, this one looks really good from a value standpoint. You know, the two vehicles alone is probably about £65, so you're basically getting, I think, the incubi free, maybe even a little bit more than that. I think there's about £100 and something worth of value in there, so yeah, it looks like a decent one. I certainly think that's a good starting point for a Drukhari force, so I am tempted to dabble in these myself. But yeah, onto the kind of detachment abilities of the Drukhari, and it's here where we see something a little bit different. So Drukhari kind of raiding forces are split into the various cults and cabals that make up the various kind of sub-factions of the Drukhari. So you can create multiple patrol detachments, each with a different cabal or cult or coven, and they will all cost 0 CP to represent the various forces that have come from the various factions that are living within Commarragh. What you can also do though, however, is create a real space raid. So real space raid is a little bit different in that there are some restrictions on what you have to take. So you have to take an Archon, you have to take a Succubus, and you have to take Homunculus. You also have to take at least 1 unit of Cabalite Warriors, 1 unit of Witches, and 1 unit of Racks. If you do take all those various kind of parts though, you get a load of bonuses. So you get all the obsessions for each of the cabals, cults and covens. You also unlock some additional abilities that are based around those various factions as well. So yes, you are tied in a little bit by which units you have to take. I do think the benefits massively outweigh that though. Obviously, if you want to kind of focus on just a witch cult or just a homunculus coven, you can still do that as well. So the book doesn't really penalise you for taking the army that you want to take, which is really cool, but it does reward you for taking this mixed real space raid faction. Interestingly, a good way of doing that would be pick up the combat patrol, pick up the battle box and a box of racks and a homunculus, and you've probably got enough kind of component parts to start creating your own real space raid detachment. So I really like that. I hope that we start to see stuff like that in other codexes as well. So custom detachments maybe, and various different things to kind of change the way the force works in order to unlock some benefits. So yeah, really like that. As we mentioned, the kind of Drukhari society is kind of split into 3 different factions. You've got the Cabalites, you've got the Witch Cults, and you've got the Homunculuses. These all have their own kind of upgrades, similar that we've seen on the kind of chaplain upgrades and the like that we've seen in the Space Marine book. These also have their own upgrades that you can spend points, which are all listed down here, not a massive amount of points, to kind of get an additional benefit. So, for example, with the your Archon, you can pay 15 points to unlock the ability to fight again within a fight phase once per battle. Pretty cool. Obviously, if you've got your Archon geared up to smash face in combat, that's a really good ability and potentially worth 15 points. Likewise, for the Witch Cult, every time they make a consolidation move, they can move an additional 3 inches, and they do not have to finish closest to the enemy model. So what you can do is take something out in combat and consolidate towards an objective, which is really cool. And then finally, you've got the Homunculus. Once per battle, when the model is destroyed, you can choose to roll a d6. On a 2+, you can set the model back up again, so basically it comes back to life. That's pretty cool. And then likewise, they all have their own kind of relics and warlord traits as well that are specific to that various sub-faction. And then there's more options later on with the various kind of cabals and cults and stuff. So lots and lots of options for your HQ choice, and I really like it. And I think there'll be quite some fun piecing together your faction with these various leaders and creating your own background and intrigue and stuff, especially on the Crusade side. What I also really like is that we've got favoured retinues. So these are, I say elite, they're technically troop choices, but better versions of the core units within the book. Now, a lot of these will be very familiar to Dark Eldar players. So we've got the Trueborn, the Blood Brides, and the Hemiots. Not sure how you pronounce that one, but yeah. These are basically kind of like elite retinue units. You can have 1 per character within the force. So for each Master Archon, you can have a unit of Cabalite Trueborn. It will cost you an additional 2 points per model. However, they get a 2+ ballistic skill, +1 leadership, and their ranged attacks are never modified. So they are always hitting on a 2+. That is properly scary. Really, really cool. Definitely worth the extra, what's that, an extra 20 points for each unit. Yeah, they're gonna be ace. Similar with the Blood Brides, for each Master Succubus or for Lilith Herespecs, you can upgrade a unit into Blood Brides. and again it's extra 2 points per model. However, they get a weapon skill of 2+, they get an extra leadership, and on a 6 with the Blade Artist ability, they become armor penetration -3. So again, really, really cool, and these things are going to absolutely murder stuff on the battlefield. And finally, we have the Homunculus ability, and they gain the ability to improve the unit's save characteristic by 1 to a maximum of 4+. You add 1 to the leadership value, and once per phase, the first time they fail a saving throw, the damage of the attack is 0. So essentially, the first saving throw that they fail for the unit, they don't take any damage from. So yeah, that's really, really cool. Again, they can all be taken in a maximum size of 10 regardless of any other rules. I guess that limits any potential shenanigans from a massive unit of them. Yeah, I really like those. They're really cool. I think I'd always spend the points to upgrade them if I can. Remember, in a real space raid, you'd probably have a couple of these on the go as well. So yeah, seems really, really good. Each of the Cabals, Cults and Covens also get obsessions, warlord traits, stratagems and relics that they unlock based on which Cabal they're from. So I suppose the main difference with the Drukhari army is that you're going to have, rather than Ultramarines example, which is, you know, army-wide, aspects of your army you're going to have these different cults and cabals, meaning that you can really quite tune your force to tailor all the various bits and bobs that you want. And because of that, there's an awful lot of, I suppose, sub-faction stuff in here, as we'll see. So we get the Cabal of the Black Heart, for example. Their obsession means that they have the Power from Pain ability and treat the battle round as being 1 higher than it actually is. So Power from Pain, as we'll see later on, is a cumulative effect that each turn you unlock a different ability. These guys count as being 1 turn higher. And in a real space raid attachment, they also unlock the ability for Blades for Hire to gain that ability as well. So there's various units in the book that have the Blades for Hire keyword. Mostly the beasts have them off the top of my head. I think there's a couple of other units, such as the Scourges, I think have that word as well. Basically this just means that your entire army will have that rule, which is really cool. They get +1 leadership, and they can reroll 1 hit whenever they shoot or fight. Their warlord trait is Labyrinthine Cunning. While the warlord is on the battlefield, each time you or your opponent spends any command points to use a stratagem, you can either roll a d6, and essentially on a 6 you get a command point back. And then their relic, Writ of the Living Muse. The bearer has the following ability. While a friendly Cabal of the Black Heart core unit is within 6 inches, each time the model makes an attack, reroll a wound of 1. Really, really nice. And then yeah, they get their own stratagem. So this is something that we see across all the various Cabals and cults. Now, there's an awful lot in here, so we'll have a quick flick through, but it's really nice that you can really kind of fine-tune, tailor that force. Again, with some of the abilities that kick in, if you've got a real space raid attachment, again, is another great reason for taking that kind of force of 3 different cults, which is really, really nice. So we've got the Cabal of the Poisoned Tongue, we've got the Cabal of the Flayed Skulls, the Cabal of the Obsidian Rose, and then we also get some lesser Cabals as well. So you can kind of create your own kind of Cabal using those, which is really nice. Again, something we've seen similar in other books. Again, just another nice way of tuning your force. We then get this again for the Witch Cult, so we'll run through the Cult of Strife, being the kind of main Witch Cult. At the start of the fight phase, if a unit with the obsession is within engagement range, it can fight first that phase, so regardless of what else is happening, they will fight first. And each time you declare a charge for the unit, add 1 to the charge roll. So they're going to be really quick and they're going to fight first, really nice. Blood Dancer. Every unmodified hit of 6 scores 2 additional hits, meaning that you can make a real blender of a kind of combat character with that, which is nice. And the File Bouquet, roll a d6 at the start of each battle round. Until the end of the battle round, the bearer gains the associated effect from the combat drugs table. This effect can be one that the bearer is already affected by and is cumulative, so that's really cool. So we'll see combat drugs a little later on, but basically it's a chart where you can pick an ability that will affect your cult units. This basically lets you get another one or an additional cumulative effect on one that you've already got, which is really, really nice. And again, we see a few different cults in this book. The cult of the Cursed Blade, the cult of the Red Grief, and then again, a little breakdown of various other abilities to create your own cult as well. And finally, we come to the Homunculus Covens. Again, similar concept. So for the Prophets of the Flesh, at the start of your command phase, each character, grotesque or monster unit, regains a lost wound, and each time an attack is made against a unit with the obsession, with a strength of 8 or more, an unmodified 1 to 3 always fail. So basically, it makes it really hard for those high strength weapons to take out your guys. You've then got a Warlord trait, Diabolical Soothsayer. When you set them up, you pick one of the two abilities, either add one to their toughness and wounds, or add one to their movement and attacks. Pretty good, and again, kind of lets you tailor what you want your Warlord to do as well, which is nice. And then finally we've got the relic, the Vexator Mask. Enemy units can't fire Overwatch of the bearer. And at the start of the fight phase, select an enemy unit within 3. They cannot fight until all other eligible units have done some. So you can basically make one of your characters a bit safer by denying a unit that they're fighting the ability to fight till everyone else has. So yeah, and again, we get a couple of other Covens in here as well. So we've got the Dark Creed, the Coven of the 12, and again, some mix and match stuff again to create your own Covens. So yeah, a lot of really nice stuff. There's loads and loads of options in there, so rather than spend us hours going through all those individually on here, there is a full kind of analysis into them over on the website if you want to check that out. But yeah, really, really cool. And since potentially you could have 3 of these across the different aspects of your army, I think that's going to be really fun seeing kind of how forces come together and which ones people gravitate to. So yeah, really, really looking forward to seeing them in action. So we've mentioned the Real Space Raid, and now we get a really good example of how it works. So essentially a battalion, and each part of your battalion will be from one of the 3 different things. So you have to take your Archon, you have to take your Succubus, and you have to take your Homunculus. Those you have to take. Likewise, you've got to take a unit of Witches, a unit of Cavalry Warriors, and a unit of Racks. Outside of that though, you're very much free to do whatever you like and fill out the rest of the detachment as you see fit. So while you are restricted a little bit in having to take those 6 specific units, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and you're going to get a lot of advantage from the abilities that we've just seen as well. So I think if I was building a Dark Eldar Drukhari force, I probably would use this Real Space Raid structure. However, the fact that your patrol detachments cost 0 means that you're not going to be spending lots of command points if you do decide to go a bit more, I don't know, cult heavy or cabal heavy. So if there is an element of this that you don't like, or you don't have the models, you're not going to get penalised by not taking the Real Space Raid. It is worth mentioning though that you do get extra abilities for taking a Real Space Raid, so it really is it is an advantage to take one. If you can, I think it's worth doing, but there's enough freedom in the book in the different structures that you can very much take the army that you want to play, which is a really nice touch, and I think that's something that they've been trying to do in this edition of the game to, I suppose, get away from the net list and let you play with the army how you want to play it. So yeah, really impressed with that. So then we get onto the stratagems, and again we've got an awful lot of stuff fun here. Over on the website, Jay has kind of gone into some of his favourite ones in some detail, but we get some really thematic stuff, such as being able to reroll hits and wounds against Drukhari. We get a really nice one that if a Kronos unit destroys an enemy unit with a melee weapon, it nearby Drukhari units are treated as being in Battle Round 5 for the purposes of power from pain. So essentially your pain engines are, let's say, encouraging the rest of your forces, which is pretty cool. So yeah, lots of really cool stuff. You've got lots of ways to be able to move as well. So for 2 command points, after shooting you can move them again, meaning that your guys can be really annoying, jump from cover to cover. Lots of really, really nice stuff. Again, in here there's no locked ones to any specific cult. They're in the cult section again, which I think makes it a lot easier to navigate this as well. It always seemed like there was a page of, chapter specific stratagems at the end, so they're kind of in the relevant area of the book as well. So yeah, I like that. So now we come on to the match play missions. As with the other 9th edition codexes, we get an assortment that you can choose to use as an objective in your games. So Take Them Alive is a purge of the enemy, progressive objective. You get 3 victory points if any character or monster unit is destroyed by melee attacks, and you get 1 victory point if any non-character, monster or vehicle units are taken out by a melee attack. So yeah, if you've got a particularly nasty close combat force, so maybe you're witch heavy, that could be a good bet. You could, there's no difficult to get objective there. It is just kill stuff, nice and reliable. Obviously, if you're playing against someone who's very character or monster heavy as well, that can be a nice way to chalk up. You don't need to kill 5 monsters or characters over the game to get your victory points worth there. Obviously, if you're taking out the non-monster and character stuff, you're going to have to kill a few more units. So it does very much depend on what your opponent's brought, but certainly an option. Beast of the Arenas is, again, situationally a very good one. So if you're playing a force that's got lots of monsters, cavalries or beasts, every time you destroy one of those units, you get 3 victory points. Again, it is only with melee attacks. If it's a Titanic unit, you get 5 victory points. So, I mean, if you're confident you can take out Titans with witches, then by all means go for it. But no, you've got lots of Thunderwolf cavalry, lots of kind of beast and monster units. Again, you don't need to take out that many of them to get the full allotment of points there. Fear and Terror, again, is another pretty easy one. Get a victory point at the end of each battle round for each model that fled from an enemy unit during that battle round. So, if you can cause a big panic test, you could easily get some victory points here. This seems, obviously depending on your playstyle, this seems a really good one to try and get some victory points. And then finally, Herd the Prey. I think this is the hardest one. You get 2 victory points at the end of your turn for each quadrant that doesn't have enemy units in it, but you can't score it turn 1, making it a little harder to get than some of the other ones, because a lot of people have probably picked objectives where they're trying to fill table quadrants themselves. Again, if you're playing a quite elite army though, potentially that's worth doing if you can try and keep them in one quadrant of the board. So in addition to the Cabal specific warlord traits that we got earlier in the book, we also get some generic ones, again split between Cabals, cults and Covens. So for the Cabals, we've got Eternal Hatred. Each time the warlord makes an attack, you can reroll a hit and a wound. Soul Thirst, add 1 to the attack's characteristic. And once per turn, when an enemy model is destroyed within 6 inches of the warlord, you regain a wound. And then Ancient Evil. At the start of the fight phase, you can select one enemy unit within engagement range of the warlord. That unit is not eligible to fight until all other eligible units have done so. So similar to an ability that we saw earlier in the book. For the Witch Cult, we've got Quicksilver Fighter. Add 2 to the attack's characteristic. Again, really nice, can make those Witch Cult warlords into real kind of attack blenders. Stim Addict. When determining the effects of combat drugs, you roll 2 additional dice, re-rolling the results of 6 that are already in effect, and basically it means that you're going to get 3 different combat drugs abilities. So again, really, really good. And then Precision Blows. Each time an unmodified hit of a 6 is made by the warlord, the target suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic of the weapon. So again, really, really nice if you can get those lucky hits of a 6. Pour a load of damage on the enemy unit. And finally, we have the Homunculus Covens. So Master Regenerist. When they use their Flash Craft ability, the target model regains 3 wounds instead of D3, so making that a lot more reliable. Master Namasini. Each time the warlord makes an attack, add 1 to the attack roll. And finally, Master Artisan. Add 1 to the toughness and wounds characteristic of the warlord. So yeah, nice mix of different abilities there. Some of them are really cool, lots of nice stuff. In addition to the cult specific relics, we also get some generic ones that can be taken across the army with a really nice kind of artwork here showing all the various relics, which I thought was cool. So we've got the Parasite's Kiss, which is a cool pistol, poison 2+. Each time an enemy model is destroyed, you gain a wound, AP -2 damage, so that's pretty nice. We've got the Helm of Spite, basically lets you deny psychic powers as if you're a psyker. We've got the Nightmare Doll, which is a homunculus only weapon. If you lose a wound, it is not lost on a 4+. So that's really cool, kind of halving all incoming damage, like an uber disgustingly resilient. The Gin Blade's a really nice weapon. AP -3, 3 damage. You do 2 additional attacks, which is amazing. There is a downside though. You roll a d6 at the end of the fight phase, and on a 1 you suffer a mortal wound, so it is a bit of a risk, but it is a awesome weapon, especially if you, say, take the ability earlier to pile in twice. You could do an awful lot of damage with that. Animus Vitae is basically a mortal wound grenade. Chuck it at a unit, takes d3 mortal wounds. If it's got 11 or more models, takes d6 mortal wounds. Also gives nearby units the next turn's power from pain ability. And then we've got the Triptych Whip. Again, pretty nice whip. AP -3, damage 2, poison 2+. Each time the user is selected to fight, add 3 to their attack's characteristics. So again, some really, really nice relics there. But, as we said before, one of our favourite parts about 9th edition is Crusade, and this book has a really, really cool Crusade section. So, first we'll go on the agendas. We've got a gruesome bounty, so you keep a captive tally for each Drukhari unit, excluding beasts from your army. At the end of the turn, add 1 to the tally if any enemy units were destroyed by a melee attack, and at the end of the battle you gain 1 experience point for every mark on its captive tally. Demonstrate superiority. So if your army includes a real space raid detachment, keep a superiority tally for each Cabal unit, each witch cult, and each Homunculus Coven. Each time an enemy unit is destroyed by an attack made by a real space raider, add 1 to the tally for that respective subfaction. At the end of the battle, the character from the subfaction with the highest tally gains 3 experience, and you can nominate 1 other unit from that subfaction to get 3 experience. So that's really cool. Basically, you've got these different elements of your army all trying to outdo each other. So whichever of those 3 elements does the more, the leader gets 3 XP, and they can nominate 1 other unit from that subfaction to get XP. Really, really like that one. So we've got Take Credit. At the end of the battle, select 1 Drukhari character from your army, and make a note of the total number of experience points Drukhari units from your army gained. For every 2 experience gained by other units, that character gains 1 experience, to a maximum of 4. And if the character is an Ascendant Lord, then for every 5 experience points gained by other units, you gain 1 Raid Spoils point. So basically, your leader takes credit for all the effort that your warriors have made. They gain renown and experience by just, I guess, sitting back in the tent on the hill sipping tea, I guess. So yeah, really nice one. And then send a message. You keep a terror tally for each Drukhari unit in your army. Drukhari infantry and biker units can attempt the following action. So redecorate. At the end of your movement phase, 1 unit for your army within 3 inches of an objective marker can perform the action. If it's completed at the end of your turn, you get 1 to your terror tally, and the objective is now terrifying. While an objective is terrifying, non-Drukhari units within 6 inches subtract 1 from their leadership characteristic. Every time an enemy fails a morale test, add 1 to the terror tally of each Drukhari unit from your army within 6 inches of that objective. And then at the end of the battle, everyone with a terror tally mark gets an experience for each one. So that's really cool. So basically you defile an objective, put, I don't know, some severed heads or something on it, freak out the enemy, and yeah, gain some experience from it. So again, some really nice thematic ones that really lend to the way that the Drukhari fight. So we also get some cool requisitions. So Lord of the Dark City is basically a way of upgrading your characters into the Lords of Commarragh that we saw earlier in the book. So whenever they gain a battle hardened, heroic or legendary rank, you can then spend a requisition point to make them into one of those better character types. So that's pretty cool. So choosing the master, again similar to the previous one, is how you can get access to the favoured units that we saw earlier. So for each master archon, master succubus or master homunculus, when you add a new unit, you can spend requisition points to make them into the favoured retinue. Obviously you have to upgrade the power level with that, in line with the rules earlier in the book, but basically means that you can't add those kind of elite units until you've got your kind of your lord's gained a bit of a reputation, and he can then hire those kind of super elite versions of the unit. So really like that one as well. So Soul Trap's a cool one. It's kind of a cumulative one that you do over games. So after a game, if you slay a character, you can spend a requisition point to add a soul point. You keep doing this over multiple games until he's got 5 of them. At that point, you can add 1 to the attack, strength, toughness and leadership of that that character. So really, really cool. You can't use it twice though, so you can't keep kind of racking up those stats. But again, really nice. So over the course of 5 games, if your character's really aggressive and killing other characters, he's going to get improved that way, which is really nice. Patron of the Killing Arts is a way of giving your witch cult units combat drugs. Essentially you spend a requisition point and you give them the combat drugs ability. Constant Source of Disappointment costs 1 requisition point. While you've got an Ascendant Lord on your order of battle, select a unit from your order of battle that has 2 or more battle scars. You can remove that unit from the order of battle. You gain a number of raid spoils equal to the unit's crusade points total. So basically, if you've got some units that have taken a bit of a battering over your crusade, you can just sacrifice them and get some raid spoils, which we'll see in a little bit in the book. And finally, we've got Clandestine Dealings. You can spend a number of requisition points in order to gain a number of raid spoils. So as we've seen in some of the other books, you can use requisition points to kind of fuel your other secondary resources in the Crusade system, which is cool. As with all the other books, we've got some battle traits that you can get as essentially level up abilities in the Crusade system. So character units can have Perfectionist, and that basically means that you always add 1 to the tally if you're keeping them for any reason for your agendas, which is cool. Proficient Predator. Once per turn you can reroll a single hit, wound, damage or saving throw. Lord of Toxins. Each time you make a melee attack, an unmodified 6 does a mortal wound in addition to any other damage. Really, really cool one. Your Witch Cults. Each time a unit makes a piling move, you can move up to 6 inches. You can improve the weapon skill characteristic of models in the unit by 1. And Lightning Strikes. Each time you make a melee attack, an unmodified 6 does an additional hit. Again, very nice. Cabalite Warriors, Skilled Raiders. When they're selected to shoot while embarked on a transport, each time a model makes a ranged attack, you can ignore any modifiers to the hit. Really nice, bearing in mind that your Trueborn kind of already have that baked in. While the unit is within 6 inches of a friendly Archon unit, each time an attack is made, you can reroll a wound of 1. And out of action tests are automatically passed. So if you're like me, and often end up getting your units killed and taken out of action in Crusade games, that's probably a pretty good pick. And then finally we've got the Homunculus Coven. Each time an enemy unit finishes a charge move within engagement range, on a 2+ they take a mortal wound. At the start of the battle you roll D3 on the combat drugs table, you gain the listed ability. And finally the unit has the following ability, Psychotraumatic Brands. Well, an enemy sighted within 6 inches, subtract 2 from psychic tests, so it gives you another source of some psychic combat in the army. So the main kind of, I suppose, gimmick in the Crusade section for the Drukhari, though, is the fact that they're getting dominance over territories within Commarragh. So they're getting renown and reputation and gaining more of these various territories within the city. And basically, after a battle on a 4+, you gain a raid spoil. And if you win the game, you get a raid spoil. You keep kind of track this as a secondary kind of resource. And as we were seeing earlier, you can spend requisition points to fuel that as well if you want to. And basically, if your order of battle contains an Ascendant Lord, you can then use those raid spoils to use this dominate ability. And you can randomly generate one territory from the table opposite by rolling a d66. So, you spend your point, you roll, 32, you get the Mesmeria, which is an arena. Each of these different things has a different territory type, and each of those different territory types then give you a new ability that you've unlocked for your army. So if we flip over, we'll have a look at these. So, Weapon Forgers, once per battle, the Ascendant Lord can use a War Gear stratagem for 0 command points. Toxin Distilleries, once per battle, in your command phase, you can select one unit to gain Poison 2+. Amazing. Arenas, in the update experience step, Witches gain additional experience points. Scourge Buyers, each Scourge that was in your army gets an additional experience point. Incubi Shrines does the same. Docks basically makes it more likely that you're going to get raid spoils, in turn allowing you to get more of these abilities. Sprawl Slums, each time you spend raid points on a 6 you get it refunded. Trading District, once after each battle you can use the Relics requisition for 0 points, which is really cool. Shadow Districts, in the update experience steps, Mandrakes get additional experience. Noble Spies allows you to use the Pray They Don't Take You Alive stratagem for 0 command points. Gang Territories lets Reavers or Hellions get additional experience points. And the Raidcraft Workshop, you can ignore one field out of action for a vehicle unit. Each of those that you do have, however, increases your Crusade points total by 1. So that's, I suppose that's the balancing mechanic. Your opponent's probably going to get more command points at the start of the game because of that. So instead of spending those raid spoils points on getting your territories though, there's also a whole host of stuff that you can spend your points on to get benefits, such as getting additional experience on your units, picking territories that might be, say if you're playing another Drukhari player and they've got a territory that you want, you basically take it over, you can scrub it from their order of battle and add it to your own. Really, really nice stuff. I quite like this, and adds an almost, I suppose, Necromunda style, RPG style element to it, and I'd really love to see stuff like this expanded further in future supplements. And again, as with other Crusade sections and other codexes, you get some weapon enhancements, battle scars and specific Crusade relics that you can take based on what level your characters are. So all this kind of stuff really adds to build the narrative of your army and tell the story, and I'd really like to play through. We might do one, a Sprues and Brews kind of crusade where we're fighting over these various territories. We might even have a map together showing the kind of control of the city. I think that'd be quite fun. And again, something you could quite easily do with a low power force and see them grow into a sprawling crime empire. And again, as we've seen in other books, we get a nice little glimpse at a Crusade army. In this case, Mr. Chris Peach from Warhammer TV, his gorgeous Drukhari army. And yeah, I find these are really nice because it gives you a different point of view compared to, say, the studio or the heavy metal armies. It gives you kind of an indication of what you can do with your own forces, which is really nice. So on to the kind of main core abilities for the army. We mentioned Power from Pain earlier. This basically increases based on the battle round. As we've seen in some of the rules, there are ways to modify that and count as being in a later battle round than you're actually in. So 1 is a 5+ invulnerable save. Battle round 2, you can charge in a turn you advance, which is really good. So you're going to be in combat turn 2 for the Drukhari, going to be really nice. 3+, each time a model in the unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. If the unit has the vehicle or monster keyword, it doesn't suffer the penalty for firing heavy weapons at enemy units within engagement range. So again, really kind of drives home the fact that you want to be super aggressive and in the face of the enemy. Turn 4 onwards, you've got a 5+ invulnerable save. And on turn 5, you automatically pass any morale tests. If the unit's characteristics can change as it suffers damage, it's counted as being double. So basically it makes your vehicles more reliable. Really cool. So yeah, and there's ways to modify that as we've seen earlier in the book. Poison weapons, we've seen before, basically these wound on a fixed value, but it doesn't work against vehicle or titanic units, you just use their base strength on them. One thing that is noted on the poison weapons is that an unmodified value always succeeds. So if there are any modification shenanigans, you're just looking for the value that's listed on the weapon itself. Blade Artists, I think we've mentioned earlier in the book, on an unmodified wound of 6, they are AP -1. Again, really cool, cracking through some armour. Insensible to pain, each time a model in the unit would lose a wound on a 5+, the wound is not lost. So basically, old style, disgustingly resilient. And then we have combat drugs. You can pick one, or you can roll 2 and get 2 random effects. If you double up, you kind of lose out on the second one. So it's whether you want to pick one that you want reliably, or gamble and try and get 2. Always gamble. Yeah, that's what I do. So Adrenaline, each time the unit fights, if it made a charge, move, or performed a heroic intervention, then until the fight is resolved, add 1 to the attacks characteristic. Add 1 to the strength characteristic of models in the unit. Add 2 to the move characteristic of models in the unit. Add 1 to the toughness characteristic of models in the unit. Improve the weapon skill by 1. And finally, improve the ballistic skill by 1. So there's no bad ones there, really. And we've seen earlier in the book, there are ways to get additional ones. I think there was a upgrade that let you roll 3 times on there. So yeah, they're really fun. So then we go on to the profiles themselves. Now, I believe there have been some tweaks in some of these units. Some of them have got a lot better than their previous incarnations. I've not played Drukhari for a long time, a couple of editions back, so I do apologise for my lack of prior Drukhari knowledge. But there's some really cool stuff here. Also shows off some of the awesome character model we've got. So obviously we've got Lilith in the new battle box, and we've had Drazar arrive recently. She's really nice. Ace kind of combat profile with a crazy 7 attacks, with each unmodified hit of a 6 doing an additional hit. AP -3, she's going to be an absolute blender. Enemy units within engagement range, they basically do a roll off if they want to fall back, and if you win they can't, so you can have people just locked in combat with her, which is really, really cool. In the command phase she can pick one of 2 abilities that kicks in. So she can charge, in which she fell back or advanced, or if she destroys any enemy models, then at the end of the phase she can fight again. So yeah, she's really, really cool and a gorgeous new model. Drazar, again, still ace, still with his crazy demiclaves, really, really nice, and again, gorgeous model. So we're going through again, there's a few weapon changes here or there. So Splinter Cannon, for example, is now heavy 3, AP -1 and 2 damage, so they're really nice now. For the witches and the racks. And it's good that you've got a nice assortment of different units that yeah, you can use for your force. Incubi are really nice now as well, with their single blade clave, +2 damage, AP -3, 2 damage, so yeah, these guys are going to be absolutely murdering people. But yeah, lots of nice stuff. Obviously we've got not much in the way of new units, and there's a few tweaks here or there. But yeah, they've got a really nice complete range now, which is really fun to see. I know some people will be disappointed there's no kind of new units added, and we still haven't got Vect in the list, which does seem a bit of a missed opportunity. I'd have liked to have seen Vect added to the force, you know, as a nod back to some of the previous books. But yeah, we get some really nice stuff in here. As we've had in the other books, we get a nice spread of the points values in a really easy to digest form as well. So really makes creating the forces a lot easier. So I've not played Drukhari for a long time, so not down with the latest points. I do believe there have been quite a few changes here or there though, so just bear that in mind. As with the other books as well, the kind of last segment of the book also gives you a nice breakdown of all the various weapons profiles and common rules as well, which is really nice. It kind of makes things a lot quicker when playing the game. So yeah, that is a quick look over the new Drukhari book. It looks really fun. It looks amazingly fun from a Crusade point of view. You've got a load of customization into how you build your army as well, which is really nice to see. And something that we at Sprues and Brews kind of really enjoy from a narrative standpoint, be able to create your own unique force and take over Commarragh and basically disrupt everyone else's plans. So yeah, that is the new Codex Drukhari. As I say, Jay's done a kind of a big write-up in depth on the website, covering the book in some great detail, but I thought we'd have a flick through it together. It looks really, really good. I'm looking forward to putting together a small Drukhari force myself and seeing what they can do. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that look at the new Drukhari book, and until next time, we will see you later.